subscribers that exist, I guess. Welcome to this.
Countless legions. We're in double digits now.
We're in double digits. Hey, welcome to this edition. We are going to be talking about WandaVision. I'm Zach.
I'm Will.
All right, and so how about we just talk about WandaVision, man? Here for the moment, and without getting into any spoilers at the moment, we'll save that. Let's do first impressions, and it doesn't necessarily have to be per episode or anything like that. But overall, what are your impressions?
I enjoyed it very much. I applaud it, for being something very different, very unique, particularly, once again, without getting into spoilers, particularly, in the front half of the show, for first quarter, really, you're not really entirely sure what really is going on. And a lot of what pushes your interest and viewership forward is wanting to have those questions answered. Now, it does sort of become a fundamentally different show once that question gets answered. And it does get answered fairly early in the series.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Absolutely agree with that.
But overall, just as a first impression, I enjoyed it and I liked it largely because as successful as the MCU has been, the one common criticism that gets leveled at it is that it is sort of formulaic. I mean, you got to it's gonna in the third act evolve into a superhero fist fight, and this, at the very least, made the attempt of subverting that expectation and doing something quite different for the MCU. And I found that refreshing. How about yourself?
So overall I enjoyed it as well. I thought that there were a lot of filler, in my opinion. My one complaint about it would be that this could have been a 2 hour, maybe 2.5 hour movie instead of 9 episodes. I get why they did 9 episodes, but at the same time, I think an instant movie to the Disney Plus would have been just fine, especially when Disney Plus has been releasing a few movies directly to the Plus and not going to the theaters and whatnot, and it seems to work okay there. I guess I don't know. Maybe it's a budgeting issue, but I definitely agree that once the question gets answered, it definitely picks up steam and takes the story forward. I felt that the first two episodes, in particularly, were nothing but fluff.
Think so, huh?
Oh yeah, that's
all right. So we're starting to wander into the landmine of, if we're really going to talk about it, we're going to have to bring up spoilers. So you just want to throw up a spoiler warning?
not yet. So
okay.
So we're not going to do any spoilers at the moment.
Okay.
Did you know much about Wanda outside of the MCU though?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you and I had spoken briefly before I watched the series, and you
Right.
alluded to, hey, if you know anything about the character, you're probably going to be able to put two and two together fairly quickly as to what's going on. And yes, that was the case. But it wasn't, not to the extent that if you're a comic fan, you'd get no value from the series. But yeah, I could definitely see where things were going.
Yeah, no doubt. So I don't think that this particular show, heck, even in any of the MCU, you've never really needed to know who these characters are from the comics. It seems like Marvel's done a great job of introducing them, giving them their origin story per se, or getting you caught up to what makes these characters special in their own right.
I don't think that knowing the character of Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch, more than a casual viewer, it necessarily distracts from, experiencing the show. If anything, you probably just get a little extra from it in the sense that if you're someone who enjoyed the show and wanted to go back and watch from the beginning, with the knowledge that you have of how it plays out and having that different viewing experience. And this is certainly one of those shows that, very much lends to that. If you have a knowledge of the character, you probably get a little bit of that experience from the jump because what this character is kind of susceptible to and her history and whatnot. Whereas a casual viewer watches the show, and if they enjoy it, they go back, and it's sort of like The Usual Suspects. You don't watch The Usual Suspects just once. That's one that each time you watch it, you catch things here and there that you didn't notice before. Correct. So correct. I think it is a show that if you enjoy that kind of viewership, if you enjoy the show, you'll like that about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is to your point about it, this could have been a 2-hour direct to Disney Plus film. Yeah, it's 9 episodes, but they're a very digestible 9 episodes. It's not like some of the Netflix series, particularly with Marvel, is that even the seasons that were very good, like Daredevil or Jessica Jones, they were these hour-long, 10-episode seasons where the filler, as you refer to, it's an hour long or 2 or 3 hours long because they had an 8-episode story or a 7-episode story, but they stretched it over 10 hours. Each episode in this one's about a half hour long. So if you're not entertained by the format of the first 2 episodes, and that's, very much one of the big hooks of the series is the formatting of, the first episode. It's very much a 1950s sitcom in the vein of I Love Lucy or Bewitched or what have you. And in the next one, it's they progress through the decades. If that isn't enough to entertain you, just okay, what is going on? Or if you don't find that in any way, seeing these characters in that situation appealing, the first 2 episodes, you're just going to be like, why? I mean, when does Vision blow up something with his eye beam? You're killing me.
Right. Yeah. No doubt about it. The idea of seeing that action is just not prevalent in the first. Heck, you don't have any action really until you get near the end of the series or the end of the season, which is fine.
Yeah. No, that's what I appreciated about it.
Yeah. What moments of little action that you do get, I find to actually be kind of comical, in the sense of comic relief, whatnot. I like that. Though I do say that the first 2 episodes, heck, even the parts of the 3rd episode is pure fluff. There were enjoyable moments within those episodes. I'll tell you right off the bat with the first episode, at the end of that episode, I'm like, what the crap? Where there's a dinner party. There's this dinner party and Vision's boss is there with his wife. And I'm like, okay, what the heck is going on here? I tell you what, if you are watching this and you have not seen WandaVision at all, this is going to be a spoiler zone from here on out. So if you don't mind spoilers, please stay and watch. If you can't handle a spoiler at all and you want to go watch it first, pause this, go watch it, come back, and then leave your comments down below. Also,
your viewing experience is going to be fundamentally different if you know what's going on before you watch the show, though. Keep that in mind, folks.
That is true. That's also true. So be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and click the notification bell, even though notifications don't mean anything.
Wait, what?
Haven't you heard?
I have.
All right. All right. So we'll give you just 3, 2, 1. Spoilers, go. All right. So episode 1. Let's hit it, man.
All right. So I actually enjoyed the first episode, the formatting of it. We get like the old school sitcom. It just made me laugh, like giggle, just like just the lunacy of it. But yeah,
Now, were you laughing at the live studio audience bit where they were throwing that in there, or did you find that kind of annoying?
I found it amusing. I wasn't laughing at the same things they were laughing at. I was laughing at the fact that it was even there. Much the I love, like the moment that Vision walks into the kitchen, they make that joke about my wife and her flying saucers, like my husband and his indestructible head, and then like laugh track, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that really caught me off guard right there when Vision walks in and the plate smashes against his head and falls to the ground, breaks, right? I was like, wait, hold on. Wanda doesn't have that much control of her powers? Like, that kind of blew me away in that moment.
In those early episodes, the big tension builder is that you don't know what the rules are. You don't know exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Like the dinner party that you mentioned, right up until the very end of that episode, it plays like a goofy Bewitched / I Love Lucy episode until Mr. Hart starts to choke on his meal.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, it kind of breaks, the theme, breaks the universe of a 50s sitcom. And whenever Wanda tells Vision to help him, it's like a genuine dramatic tension that doesn't exist in the format that they're showing. So you're just left going, okay, what is going on? And once again, if you're familiar with the character, you can kind of put 2 and 2 together that you may not know exactly what's going on, but you kind of figure that, Wanda is kind of manifesting this stuff. But that's why I thought using old school television and the idea of it being a broadcast to the outside world was clever, and that's why I appreciated it. Because even though I knew that was going on, that was different, and I was able to enjoy that.
So speaking on that broadcast, that because it does end with a hand, all you see is a hand taking notes of this screen, and then you realize, okay, there's a broadcast of this Wanda TV show, and someone's watching it. So my mind, I was sitting here thinking, okay, is this just an act? Is this, what's going on here? I honestly didn't know what to think. I'm like, okay, maybe she meant to do that when, crash the plate against the Vision's head, when she's cooking and turns the chicken into a batch of eggs that uncooked raw eggs, still in the shell, I mean, that I was like, whoa, okay. And then having a lobster flying around, I mean, it was pure chaos.
Of course, you found out later in the show that it is all just an act. She's basically the dungeon master.
Well, sure, but you don't figure that. Well, she was part of the act until Agatha Harkness, realized that, she had much more to do with that.
Sure. That's the aspect of the show that if you go back and watch it a second time, you'll get a little bit more out of just knowing that Agnes isn't just the nosy neighbor.
Right. And so there were aspects of that where Agnes was making her appearance and just as Vision is questioning that whole deal, why is Agnes showing up at all these opportune times, or it's just these coincident, here's an event, boom, Agnes shows up type of deal. And so in that sense, you're kind of following along with Vision. It's almost you're viewing the movie or the show not only through Wanda's eyes, but also through Vision's eyes in this. And Vision doesn't know that he's just an apparition of her imagination at this point. Though that's kind of interesting too, because that manifestation breaking through the hex, watching him just start to fall apart, that was pretty bizarre too.
Yeah, they get pretty. The whole thing with Vision, in the last episode, they kind of dig into quite a bit. You use the word manifestation. I respect that these two versions of Vision, even though it starts out in a town leveling battle, Vision would be the character to resolve it through a philosophical discussion. So yeah, but it had not occurred to me that you do kind of, it seems sort of obvious with a name like Vision, but you do kind of experience it through his perspective, because he is the first character within Wanda's construct who really puts two and two together that things aren't right. I mean, you think it's Wanda.
Right.
But you don't find out till later that that's not the case.
Did you by any chance watch the end credit scenes on the last two episodes?
Oh, sure. I will say this, though. I mean, I know we talked about what our overall impressions were and how it becomes a fundamentally different show once you find out that it's a manifestation of Wanda, and then Agnes and all that. This show did make me super excited for the next Doctor Strange film.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Especially whenever she is meditating and going into the other dimension. That was pretty interesting. What I also found is that the writer of the show didn't know that Wanda had defeated Dormammu before. He didn't know much of that part of the character and whatnot. And I'm just sitting here thinking, how in the world do you make this show and not do a little bit of research into these characters and whatnot? I mean, heck, you could go to wiki characters and, Marvel has its own encyclopedia, there's books on that stuff and whatnot. But I guess it is what it is. At least there was somebody over the project that could bring it all together and whatnot. So, right. No, I'm definitely more excited for this new Doctor Strange movie. Quicksilver makes an appearance, and we obviously see that
sort of.
Sort of.
The Incredible Ralph Boner.
Who, yeah.
Yeah. I.e. Agnes's husband.
So, which is weird, right?
Yeah.
You do get a little Easter egg whenever he shows up at the end of the episode, and he's like, where's Popsicle? And I don't know if you remember watching Days of Future Past, where I believe that was Days of Future Past.
It's my favorite X-Men movie, Days of Future Past. So.
Yeah, and then he's, got a popsicle in his mouth as everything's in slow motion, and he's just, doing these slow punches and whatnot, and tipping the bullets and redirecting the bullets, causing coffee to go flying in someone's face. I mean, all that's kind of funny.
Well, I'm telling you, man, if you want to fight crime, super speed. But anyways, we won't get into that
again. That's true. You mentioned that in the last week's episode, super speed.
But probably the one criticism that I really do have about the show that we alluded to earlier is that it does kind of become your typical MCU fare the moment that Sword and all that stuff gets involved. But once the focus starts to shift to outside of Wanda's construct, I mean, don't get me wrong, the characters very entertaining. You know, like Darcy and oh man, the FBI agent from Ant-Man, whose name escapes me. I enjoyed his character.
Yeah.
But, you know, like the main villain, the main antagonist, the head of Sword, they very briefly kind of set up very early on the character's introduction that he might not be just the generic government bad guy. And then that's exactly what he turns into. Like, he breaks hard very quickly when he starts.
Oh, absolutely.
You start to think there might be some complication there, but there isn't.
Well, you know, it all goes back to Hydra, you know, in that sense. Hydra, at least in the comics, is still not defeated, but
sure.
If they can infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., and S.H.I.E.L.D.'s no more, and Sword is the outcome, and at least in the MCU, of that manifestation because of Hydra and whatnot. It wouldn't surprise me if there's some kind of infiltration in that sense. It doesn't have to be, but it wouldn't surprise me. Sure. But then again, it could be a Skrull. You know, it could be, or a Kree. I don't know. You know, who knows?
I just got the impression that the guy was just a douche nozzle, and that was what the character was. But I think they are working towards secret invasion with all the Skrull stuff, like with the after.
Yeah.
Which I'm kind of because Captain Marvel, it was all right. I mean, I didn't think it was incredible. I didn't think it was terrible. It was okay. I mean, it's but
it didn't have the origin story of a character that becomes a hero, becomes a badass. She's always been a badass.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if I can. It's been a while since I've seen it. I saw it when it first came out in theaters, but this is one of the few MCU movies that didn't really do anything for me. So a lot of the investment of setting up stuff like with the Skrulls and all that stuff, I'm just been like, okay, man. I mean, if it, so I was much more interested in the very end credit scene with Wanda. You know, when she's, so I'm super excited for Doctor Strange too, especially because in Infinity War, they had Doctor Strange actually casting spells and fighting with magic, as opposed to in the first Doctor Strange movie where it was just glow fist fighting.
Well, so you bring up something interesting, and I want to go back into the hex. Mm-hmm. When Vision is outside of that hex, and they're trying to grab him, the Sword agents are trying to grab him.
Sure.
As it's falling apart, obviously the twins something's happened to Daddy, you know, and Wanda just does her thing and starts expanding that hex.
Mm-hmm.
Expanding it and expanding it. It just keeps growing and growing and growing until Vision gets back into it and consumes Darcy and several Sword agents. It really is interesting because have you read House of M at all?
Yes, I have. It was a very long time ago, but yeah, okay. That's why I kind of understood what more than likely the story, the direction it was going in, but just what intrigued me and what kept me interested was the whole TV angle. I think was a very clever idea. Yeah. But I had some notion like something's going on with Wanda post Vision's death, doing something with her incredible power. Like,
well, Go on. Sorry.
No, I figured, this was going to be the show that really kind of brought Scarlet Witch up to the power level that you, at least similar that you saw in the comics, because it's sort of like Thor. And Thor 1 and Avengers 1, that's a fundamentally different sort of character than what you saw in Infinity War and Thor 3, where he could destroy entire armies. I mean, just the story requirements just required him to be God tier, as opposed to early MCU, where it's like, well, we don't want to get too crazy, So
well, he even though he's worthy of the hammer, he still has his struggles, and with those struggles and whatnot, it keeps him from being at his full potential.
Sure.
So in this deal with now we see so many sword agents get consumed, and just as Monica Rambeau becomes powerful, a superhero, or gains superpowers in this sense. I can't help but wonder how many more people now have powers, or if they do, are they going to appear in the next series, I guess, or movies as they start coming out, and they flash back to this moment when the Hex is expanding and to explain how they got their powers, or as when she was receding the Hex and making everything go back to normal. When she was doing that, did they lose their powers? We know that Monica doesn't.
Sure.
And we know that Scarlet has the power to do that. We know that she has the power to take people's powers away.
Right.
And
if I recall in House of M, she just depowered every mutant on the planet, right?
Not all of them. There was 100 and something. I can't remember the exact number. It was less than 200.
Yeah, I remember it involved her depowering a large number of them. So just something of that nature. So.
Yeah, which ended up leading into Civil War.
I want to reread that now because of this show.
Yeah. Well, we could probably.
I got it floating around here somewhere.
We could probably definitely record and talk about that too, because that's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing that one. That's because when I first read it, I absolutely hated Civil War. But anyway, all right, let's go back into WandaVision.
Oh, that's a whole other. Okay, we might have to do an audio commentary for Captain America: Civil War, then just release another episode talking about how it was infinitely superior than the book. It's one of the few instances where, yes, folks, the movie was better. It was.
Oh, yes. Civil War was definitely better than the book.
Yeah, but that's a hard tangent we're about to break towards. So
there's some questions I still have from that show. What happened to the guy in the beehive, or not the beehive, but in the bee suit? Whatever happened to him?
Mm-hmm.
What was his business? What was he all about? That Dottie too. What's up with Dottie?
Well, I got the impression that Dottie was just another person who was innocently trapped by Wanda, who was just playing the role that Wanda had hexed her to play.
But remember in that episode, I think it was episode 2. Could be wrong. It's been a while since I watched the first 2 episodes.
Oh, like whenever the FBI agent is saying, like, Wanda, who's doing this to you, and
yes,
like, hey, I don't mean any harm. Like, I don't believe you. She kind of breaks character there for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just it. Like, just her consciousness broke through for a second when Wanda's concentration was broken by the agent asking her what's wrong. So, but I could be mistaken, but that's the impression.
And then the other, why in the world is she sending out a receiver that she's having a TV series about her life?
From what I gather, like with those flashback scenes about, her dad trying to sell DVDs and they just watching sitcom after sitcom, that's just, a hobby that she's always enjoyed since childhood. And that was her way of coping, I guess, that's what they were driving for.
Well, I can understand that, but to broadcast that out in some kind of only Darcy was able to figure out. It's like, hold on, how is it that she's the only one to figure out, and it's some kind of radiation radiation signal.
Yeah, let's talk about like the truly fantastical element of the character of Darcy from Thor 1 and 2 becoming a scientist. I don't know. I mean, she was having a hard time wrapping her head around Mjolnir. And so I don't, that just maybe, it was one of those things where like, oh, okay, so she's a scientist now. All right. I'll just go with it. Stranger things happen.
She must have really decided to study under Skarsgård's character after he went nuts, and so that might be that, right?
Maybe so.
Because I honestly thought that was really interesting too. That Darcy was able to figure out using an old TV, and who's got an old TV lying around? It's not like you can go to a pawn shop and get one. That's
they certainly found a lot of those.
It's kind of interesting. Not to say that they don't have resources to find them, but I mean, I'm not even sure I know anybody that has a TV.
Like an actual tube television with the curved screen and the knobs, the whole 9 yards.
So there's a few problems I think I have with that idea. Is that okay? So you can have an HD antenna and it still picks up your regular TV before everything went to HD,
right?
And so if your rabbit ears can do that, why not just hook up regular rabbit ears? It's the same concept, right?
Right.
I don't know. There was a bend in the imagination that had to happen in order for this broadcast to come through, and then she's now writing down these episodes, and we know that from her writing it down, she's like, oh, this happened last week, and last week's episode when she was talking about one of the episodes, so that at least a week had passed between. I think it was episode 2 and 3, or episode 3 and 4, something like that. Maybe it was episode 1 and 2. I can't remember. It's been a while. So,
I know one thing. I think in the future, anytime there's an element of the story that doesn't work for me, I'm pretty sure I'm going to refer to it as me suffering a bend in my imagination. That's an excellent term. So, I mean,
had to bend my imagination. So it's like, well, it's what I do whenever there's plot holes that don't make sense,
Sure.
And the show, like for how slow it moved in the beginning, it seems, to how fast it progressed. I don't know if it progressed too fast. I don't know.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we've talked about how the show becomes fundamentally different by episode 3 when it's revealed, that this is a construct of Wanda's. And, we kind of praised it for being very different from standard MCU fare on the front end. How did the finale work for you, where it does turn into a superhero, supervillain flying in the sky, bashing each other, hurling fireballs at one another? How did that land for you?
So this was
wrapped up.
So we see that Agatha Harkness, when she goes to start absorbing the powers of these witches in episode, I guess that was 8 as the introduction, right?
Right.
And she's sucking their life force away from them. Wanda is using her powers, and it's sucking the life force out of her. But in episode 8, they're in the basement, and there's runes that Agatha that had used these runes to keep Wanda from using her spell. And that just kind of threw me off there for a moment because the whole hex is her. How in the world can she create a rune within the spells that keeps her from using powers when there's this hex? So she's got to still be using power to keep the hex there, correct?
Oh, yeah, that's certainly a bend in the imagination. Yeah, that's a good point. She's got runes inside of her construct.
Yeah.
So if she can't use her magic anymore while she's within the rooms, so in theory, due to the show's internal logic, her
the hex should
yeah.
So,
I mean, granted, not totally intended to be dug into that deep, but yeah, it's fun to ponder.
Here's a plot. There's a hole.
Yeah. A thermal exhaust port no more than 2 meters wide.
Yeah. Don't think too much about it. So she's using her. So she finally gets out and she's using her powers. Her life force is being drained from her. Wanda then has to cast runes, learning about, okay, I can conjure these runes and keep her from using her power. So she casts these runes and somehow she's thrown all this power and then absorbs all her power, all of Agnes's power, it seems, right? I thought it was cool. Don't get me wrong. I thought it was really, really cool. But logically thinking about it, it's like that doesn't make any sense. The last it made more sense with White Vision and Vision having this battle of existence, this philosophical question of what is existence and who are we.
I dug the ship of Theseus experiment discussion. I thought that was very neat and fun to see play out.
Yeah.
I request elaboration.
So,
I'm going to use that phrasal.
Well, so when he brought that up, to be honest with you, I didn't know much about that. So I had to look it up, and then I was like, okay, that's got to be in my wheelhouse to go read. So.
Okay, so how did you feel about the ending of the series, period, with where things are left with Wanda? Because she basically enslaves a few thousand people, all right? She gets 100 times more powerful. She gets her very good-looking comic book costume that's, made for, live action. It looks very good.
Yeah.
But my personal take is I understand that a god tier character like that isn't going to be sent to prison. You can't hold what she's just going to voluntarily sit there forever. But kind of Rambo's character in particular, along with the rest of the characters, just being okay with her, just go, well, yeah. Sorry about that. Got my new lease on life. I'm gonna leave now.
Yeah, so I don't know what's going to come from this. I honestly don't. Because we know what happened in the comics within WandaVision. We know that what it led to. We already had Civil War already happened in the MCU. So it might be Civil War 2. I mean, we do know that Civil War 2 happened not that long ago in the comics. So, though that's totally different spin of why that took place, but I don't know. It might be that they're going to lead into something to try and restrain her. But once again, I don't know what you're going to do unless you're going to bring in Doctor Strange to stop it and put her into another. But then again, I can't remember the name of the new Doctor Strange movie, but it has something to do with the multiverse.
Yeah, multiverse of madness.
So with Wanda learning and understanding how to use her chaos magic, which she still doesn't have a good grasp on. In the comics, Agatha spends more time mentoring her on that stuff, until supposedly she killed her before the House of M took place.
Well, I tell you what, I want to see Scarlet Witch as the villain in Doctor Strange too. I don't think that's what they're going to do, but that'd be awesome.
It is interesting to think that if she can conjure vision and make a manifestation out of him that's physical, I'm kind of curious if she's going to do it again.
Right.
And if that happens, I imagine what she'll end up wanting to do is go home or find a home and live a quiet, secluded life with her and her husband, and then get pregnant again with her imagination and conjure up two kids again.
Right.
I imagine that's what she wants, and she may even conjure up her brother.
Ralph Boner.
I honestly am not quite sure what to think, other than in a real world scenario, there's nothing you're going to be able to do.
No.
She's a god. She could flatten you. She could turn you into goo if she wanted to.
All right. So overall for WandaVision, is that hey, is that thumbs up, thumbs down, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10? How do you want to do this? Where does WandaVision sit for you?
If we're going to do a 5-star, I give it at least a 3.5, almost 4-star.
I think I'm at a 4. Yeah, I agree. The overall concept of the show won me over, and even though it does kind of end in the typical MCU way, and it did kind of bother me a bit that it was like, hey, she basically tantamount to tortured an entire town full of people and just basically gets to go about her way. And people seem to be just fine with it. I think overall, the show charmed me is a good way to say it. I genuinely enjoyed it all the way through, and I think the 9 relatively short episode format worked really well for the story that they had. So then I'll give it a 4 out of 5 stars, and I guess that's do it going forward, giving it 5 stars.
If to be honest with you, what I really liked about the first 2 episodes, even though you heard me mention it's fluff, right? And those sitcoms of those eras were fluff. There was nothing real deep to them. They were there to be comical.
Special episodes.
I'm sorry.
Not enough very special episodes.
Yeah, but what I liked about it is especially the second episode with the magic act between Vision and Wanda. I thought that was charming or bewitching.
Yeah.
And so I honestly kind of wanted more of that. In that sense, I could definitely see like a spin-off of having more kind of episodes of that if they were going to do a second season. I don't think that's going to happen, but
sure.
I thought that was kind of cool. Any last closing thoughts?
No, man. Once again, I was just impressed that they tried to pull off something very unique and different. After about 10,000 MCU movies that ended with a huge superhero fist fight, it's what I appreciated about Doctor Strange, the way he resolved the story in the third act wasn't with a huge spectacle. It was just, with his mind. the
Yeah.
Dormammu. So I mean, that's a good way to get me on your side if you can subvert my expectations in an entertaining way.
Well, we know that she's going to be more powerful because she's researching in the dark or in the with the oh my gosh, brain farting over here. Interdimensional magic.
Yeah.
You know, the same astral. She's astral learning. You saw her form just sitting there, just researching, just same as Doctor Strange, and her physical body's out doing something else, but her astral self is sitting there just researching in the arts of
Sure.
the magic of interdimensional, so that she's only going to get more powerful in that sense. So here's something a little interesting that's break away from Wanda. Have you heard that Tokyo or Japan has built a 60-foot Gundam robot?
No.
And it is 24. What do they call it? It was it has the ability to have 24 different movements that it makes, and it's 60 foot, and it's based on the RX-78-2 Gundam.
I have no idea what that is, but okay.
They opened it up December 19th of last year for tourism and whatnot. It's kind of like its own little theme park and all that stuff. Of course, the robotic engineers here in America are like, that's not a real robot because it can't move on its own and blah, blah, blah. Of course, building a robot like that from Gundam to scale, the technology would just be impeccable. We probably don't even have the research technology to make that even happen.
Well, my knowledge of Gundam is extremely limited, but technically they're right, and it's not a problem because Gundams are mechs that have pilots. They're not actual straight up robots anyway. So, ha!
Thought that might be a little something to throw out there. I learned that in my Popular Mechanics magazine that came in earlier this month. So
Nice.
I read that and I was just like, you know what, I might want to share a little of that info. I'm not really a big fan of the Gundam, and that just lost whatever subscribers we did have. So
Well, I mean, first episode, I'm, pissing off Aussie fans, and now I'm pissing off Gundam fans by not being a fan of Gundam. I mean, at this rate, we're going to have, just negative subscribers. We're just going to get a letter from YouTube. That's what we're going to get. It's like, sorry, this ain't working out.
Not only will you never be monetized, you owe us money.
Yes.
Yeah.
For wasting our time.
Wasting our space.
Yes.
You uploaded to our servers. You crashed them. Oh, that'd be great. All right, guys. I appreciate you guys. If you've spent 70, if you spent 48 minutes watching our nonsense, thank you, and come again. We'll be doing another episode very soon. Talk to you guys later. This is Zach.
This is Will. See you around.
Bye-bye.